Hello and welcome. My name is Marc Stettner, and I am a project management specialist with Continental Automotive and a project management instructor for the University of Alabama. Today I'm going to explain to you how to fill out your application to take the PMP exam. First, I will review the eligibility requirements. Then I will show you how to break down your experience so that you can meet the eligibility requirements. And finally, I'll demonstrate the use of a supplemental worksheet which you can use to help you get organized prior to filling out the application. All right, let's review the PMP requirements in more detail before we start talking about filling out the application. First of all, if you recall, there are two options which you can apply for the exam. Option 1 is with a high school diploma. Option 2 is with a bachelor's degree, and in both cases you may have a global equivalent of one of these two options. Let's talk about option 1 first. Well, in option 1 with the high school diploma or equivalent, you're going to need a minimum of 5 years or 60 months of what we call unique non-overlapping experience, during which at least 7,500 hours were spent leading and directing project tasks. And of course, you'll need the 35 contact hours of formal education. And in both cases, option 1 and option 2, you still have the same 35 contact hours of formal education. Let's take a look now at option 2. That's with a bachelor's degree. Again, with that, you need a minimum of 3 years, 36 months of unique, non-overlapping professional project management experience. We're going to talk about unique, non-overlapping experience and what that means in the following slides. But for option 2, during these 36 months, you will need at least 4,500 hours that were spent leading and directing project tasks. So let's take a look at this, how this would lay out in more detail. All right, now I'm going to talk to you about how to document your chronological 36 months and your cumulative 4,500 hours that you would need if you have a bachelor's degree. So let's come down here and take a look at example 1, which is non-overlapping projects, meaning that you worked on one project at a time, maybe not 100%, but you were assigned to only one project. Now, if you recall, you can go back 8 years from today to document your project experience. And in that past 8 years, you're going to need to accumulate 36 months of chronological time and 4,500 hours of project management time. So let's take a look at this example. So we're at time 0, or today, and we go back 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, etc. And let's say project 1 that you want to document, you worked on 7 years ago. You were assigned 50% to that project, and you worked on that project for 2 years, or 24 months. So we would come up here to our table, project 1. We accumulated 24 chronological months. Now, this is regardless of the percentage. Now, notice we were only assigned 50%. We still get credit for 24 months. Now, let's say that we accumulate approximately 2,000 hours per year, and we were 50%. So we were accumulating 1,000 hours per year on this project. Now, let's come down here and see what we did next. Well, next we worked on project 2. Of course, we took a year off here and did other work and didn't work on projects. But 4 years ago, we worked on project 2, and again we were applied 50% for 2 years. So we're going to accumulate 24 months. We're going to accumulate 2,000 hours, and then we took another year off, did not do project work, and finally project 3, which we're currently on, we've been working on for the past 12 months, but we've been applied only 25% to this project. So at 2,000 hours a year, 25%, we would accumulate 500 hours. Okay, so now let's take a look at our totals. Well, our total hours is 4,500 hours within the past 8 years. That would qualify us. And our total chronological is 48 months. That would qualify us since we only need 36 months. So this is an example of how to document your project work in the case that you have non-overlapping projects. And next we'll take a look at overlapping projects. Alright, now let's take a look at example 2, where we've got the case where to document your project experience requires overlapping projects. Overlapping projects means that you were assigned to more than one project at a time. So in this case, let's take a look. Let's start by looking at Project 1. Project 1, you started 4.5 years ago. You were assigned 25% to Project 1, and you stopped 2 years ago. So this is a total of 2.5 years. Now let's go back up to our table, Project 1, chronological. We would document 30 months or 2.5 years, and we would get 30 months chronological credit for that. Now, in those 2.5 years, we would also get cumulative hours. So with a total of 2,000 possible hours per year at 25% per year, we would accumulate 500 hours per year. So in the case of 2.5 years, this would give us a total of 1,250 hours. Now let's go next to Project 2. Now Project 2, we started 4 years ago, and we were assigned to Project 1 and Project 2 at the same time. So we were 50% on Project 2 and 25% on Project 1, and then perhaps 25% on non-project work. But in any case, let's take a look at Project 2 next. Now, if we go up to Project 2 and look at chronologically, notice we would not get any additional chronological credit for Project 2 because it was we've already accumulated those months under Project 1, and this Project 2 is in parallel with Project 1. But we do get cumulative hours for this project, and notice that we're 50% on this project for 2 years, and that would give us 2,000 hours approximately for that project. Okay? And now finally, we're currently on Project 3, and we're assigned 75%, and we've been working, say, for the past 12 months on this project. So what can we do with that? Well, come back up to our table. We will get 12 months chronological time for that project. It's not in parallel with any others. And we would get credit for 75% of 2,000 hours over the last 12 months, or 1,500 hours. So now let's add up our totals. Our cumulative hours, we're going to get 4,750 hours, so that qualifies us. And chronologically, we would get 42 months, and that qualifies us. So this is the way that we can document overlapping projects. Okay, well, so far we've talked about how to document your total experience to make sure that you've got 4,500 hours and at least 36 months in the case of option 2 when you have a bachelor's degree. Alright, that's what we call the level 1 breakdown, meaning that you have the total hours for each project. Now, when you actually fill out your application, you're going to need additional breakdown and distribution of your hours specifically. So let's take a look and go back to example 1 where we had our project 1, project 2, and project 3 non-overlapping. And let's take a look at and see what PMI will require of you to further, in terms of further breaking down your hours. Well, we're going to need to go to what we call level 2. Level 2 means that we take the 2,000 hours from project 1 and we have to break it down into what PMI calls the 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So we'll have to take the 2,000 hours and break it down, for example, 100 hours towards initiating, 400 hours towards planning, 1,000 hours towards executing, 400 towards monitoring and control, and 100 hours closing. This total has to equal the 2,000 hours. So this is what we call a level 2 breakdown. So level 1 breakdown would not be sufficient when you fill out your application. You would also need to go to level 2. Okay, continuing on with our example, we have our project 1 where we worked 50% and we accumulated 2,000 hours. That's our level 1 breakdown. We said that we have to take that to level 2 breakdown and determine how many hours we put against each one of the 5 process groups of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Now, let's take a look at what you would actually have to put on the actual application with PMI. Well, you're going to have to take the amount of hours you spent on that project within that process group, and you're going to have to specify what tasks you actually worked on and how many hours you put into that task. And that's what we call the level 3 breakdown. So if we come in and we want to really allocate the 100 hours within initiating we spent on project 1, we're going to have to break it down into what we call initiating tasks. And PMI will give you the tasks and you'll have to fill in the hours. So for example, initiating, they have 5 possible tasks that you can break initiating down into. For example, the first one is how many hours did you conduct project selection methods to evaluate the feasibility of new products or services? Or perhaps task 2, did you spend time identifying key stakeholders and performing analysis to gain buy-in and requirements for the success of the project? And so on. So they give you 5 potential tasks here. And that's the level at which you will actually enter your hours in the application. Let's take a look at an actual application online that I'm filling out. So let's take our 100 hours, for example, and we have project 1, and I've already put the dates in, and now I'm at the point in the application where it says, please enter the number of hours spent on each of these tasks for this project. And this is where we have to start putting in the hours we spent on the tasks, and eventually we want to get up to 4,500 hours. Now, you'll need at least some hours in each process group to qualify, but not on every project. So it could be that only one project you worked on initiating. Furthermore, I don't believe that you will need hours in every task. So as long as you have some hours in every process group, you should qualify. So let's take a look at how I broke down the 100 hours. So for example, 25 hours I put on project selection methods, 50 hours on identifying key stakeholders, 10 hours on defining scope, and 5 hours on documenting high-level risks. So this is what you'll actually see on the exam, and it'll take you through the questions for each project. It's going to take you through the questions for each process group. So let's take a look and see if I hit next. It should take me to... Okay, so now we hit next, and we're looking at the next process group, which is planning. And notice that they've got different questions here in the planning process, and you go through the same process of allocating all your planning hours on that project. I hit next. I see executing, and it'll take me through the executing questions. Notice there's quite a few executing questions, and then it'll take me to the monitoring and controlling questions, and finally it'll take me to the closing processes. Okay, so you'll put your hours in at this level 3, and that's what we need to prepare for.